Okay. Ready to go? Okay. Good morning, everybody. All right. Welcome to the second day of the GSTC 2024 conference in Singapore. So my name is Jason Lin. I'm from Hotelzero. I will be your moderator this morning for the measurement and evaluation. So thank you for coming to this exciting panel. We'll try to make this as insightful and practical and actionable as possible for all the attendees here. So as you know, a lot of your sustainability transformation start with a vision and looking at your current operations and how do you transform and really actualize. And really what it brings down to the data term is how do you really first discover what kind of data and what kind of measurement you wanted to really analyze for your operation, and how do you collect those data, right? How do you really break it down and understand your gaps and know where you are, to really how do you optimize it, to really improve and normalize it in the future so that it's just everyday business for all of you. So today we have a very exciting panelist who will be sharing their day-to-day challenges and practical solutions in terms of data measurement, and also they're from very diverse industries. So I have the privilege to first introduce Matt from easyJet, who is the Chief Operating Officer of easyJet Tours. So what I found interesting is Matt actually has a lot of experience in the airline industry, and you just sort of recently became a CEO of a tour operator. So I love to dig more insight about that transformation, and I think you have a wealth of experience in operation. And as you all know, by just knowing the insight is not quite enough, right? You wanted to leverage that insight and drive behavioral changes. So we're also very pleased this time we have a behavioral scientist. Saba, please come up. So Saba is actually an expert in behavioral science from BehaviorSMART platform that develops strategies based on data-driven approach to really influence behavior change, both on the consumer side and probably business side as well, to really make this a reality, right? And next we have Roger, who is the Director of Sustainability from Marina. I believe is one of the largest properties in Singapore. And I was just kind of doing my catch-up last night on his LinkedIn profile. I found you have many years of meeting experience as well. So I'd love to kind of also learn about that and how the MICE and hotel industry translates. And finally, of course, we have Eric from Greenview, who has been, of course, a pioneer in the industry for the last 15 years. And I believe Eric's and his team has contributed greatly to this overall industry's standards and really create a lot of best practices for all of us and open source a lot of those works. So a lot of us can really learn from his dedication and commitment to this practice. All right, so just trying to give you guys a bit of a flow of today's presentation. So we're actually going to start with Eric from Greenview to really talk about kind of the evolution, I believe, and the whole macro trends of measurement, as he's definitely the global expert in this topic. And then we'll talk about how the hotel actually applies it from Roger's presentation to really see the practical view on how a really large hospitality player really implements on these. And then we're going to have Matt from easyJet talk about the same perspective, but maybe a slightly different approach for measuring tour operations and his supply chain. And finally, sort of after all these insights, we love to get the perspective from BehaviorSMART about how we should influence our customers or partners or stakeholders toward the right direction. All right, so we'll start today's presentation. Eric.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Jason. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. So let's try to see if we can see something different about measurement evaluation. Let's not have the same conversation from the last few years. There's always something new, something different. I mean, I speak a lot, but I want to give a shout out to the AV for putting the receiver in the back pocket this way. It forces me to sit up straight. This is amazing, so thank you. Like, why didn't I do this before, right? So there's always something that you can learn. So the thing I want to say first is the lexicon of what we talk about in sustainability is not always well understood. So you have to make sure, we're speaking the same language. Measurement might mean something different to different people as well as evaluation. And I was, for example, talking with the Travelers team last week, and to them, performance data, attributes of what a hotel does and has, and certifications are called data. So to them, that's data. When we talk measurements, generally there's performance evaluation, there's performance measurements of metrics, right? But there's also measuring a bunch of other stuff, and measurement has a much broader aspect, especially in the GSTC criteria. Then evaluation, there's a lot of evaluation, where one is evaluating your own internal performance based on measurements. The other is evaluating what and how correctly a hotel has applied certain criteria in terms of the evaluation. And then third is evaluating the data you have to make decisions about something else. So there's a lot of this jumbling going on. And again, we need to get this straight first off. I mean, it's tough, right? It's not GSTC certified. It's the hotel is certified to a CB that has been accredited by their standard by the GSTC, right? Again, that's the kind of wording we need to understand, right? So here we go. All right. And now about Greenview. So I founded Greenview 2008 with about 30 people. We got a booth there. You can check us out and learn all about the work we do. But we do a lot of sustainability work across the board. GSTC was important to us. I've been on the standards committee since 2013, and we liked GSTC back when we started really digging into it as a program component, because it allowed hotel companies, which we work with many, to standardize and harmonize the way they roll out a consistent set of criteria and application to their specific case across the global portfolio. The ability to say, here's my program as a company, and I'm going to go take that program and make sure it's aligned with the GSTC, but here's how I do it as a company. So we really like that component. And now, this is now obviously the topic du jour. We do a lot of other work, and they can tell you about it. We have been seminal also. We developed the Hotel Carbon Measurement Initiative for how you measure the carbon footprint of a room night. So that's a very good cocktail party discussion. Yes, we developed the way you measure the carbon footprint of a room night. Hotel Sustainability Basics, we were the technical partner, and we did a lot of work on helping define how things are measured and rallying the industry for certain things. We have a lot of data and metrics. We have an index of benchmarking energy, water, carbon, benchmarking of best practices. We have basically the backbone of what is now Scope 3, Category 6 emissions for accommodation. We provide that to governments, business travel buyers, and everyone. And yes, over 100 companies now with plenty of nice logos. So here's the trends. First, yes, there's much more measurement. This is the amount of data we've been receiving every year in our benchmarking index. We're now up to 30,000 hotels. In 2014, it was like 2,000. Why? Because people were just not measuring. So we're seeing a lot more. So yes, now that people are starting to measure, they realize the challenges, right? And why? Regulation, everybody knows why now we need to measure performance data, and we start to realize, I need a system to measure it. And then second is, it's not as easy as I thought, because you have to actually put the data in a format based on an invoice, and that is probably the single biggest systemic challenge that we're trying to solve still. But there's a lot more measurement going on of performance data in this case. Now, those in Singapore, I'm only going to present 3 slides now. I'm not presenting 65. It's going to be not data heavy, but here's the insights we see. So this is the results of this is hotel energy usage of full-service hotels that are not resorts in Singapore that have outsourced laundry. So these are the actual data. So you can see there's a massive range. So you look at the quartiles. Hotel in the upper quartile is 389, lower quartile is 202. That's a 2.0 gap. This is the state of play of measurement. There's a wide range of performance, even among hotels of similar asset class, or that should be performing similarly. And this is not just Singapore. You see this all over the world. And these are actually low in 2022 because of low occupancies. It went down. But it's usually 2.0, meaning that the hotel number 75 is twice as consumptive of energy and water as hotel number 25. So it's very tough to do building performance standards, metrics, and say, yes, you need to see this threshold, or where do I perform, or my EUI. But if the main message is you can always improve. And if you find where you're at in that curve, you can usually improve. Water is the same, and you see a lot of water is interesting because there's a lot more hotels in the upper end that really push the quartiles out. And if you look at these numbers in a destination, you can start to see where the pain points. And so we start working with Singapore, working with Thailand, and others, and look at these numbers. US as well in their Green Lodging Trends report. So that's the focus of measurement, right? Now, I'm sure we'll get into the intricacies of measuring energy, water, carbon, but let's talk what's next. Apologies for those who have nightmares about Scope 3 already, but Scope 3 and carbon emissions is the next frontier. It's a pain, it's nebulous, it's evolving, it's not solvable easily. Don't believe anybody who says we can make your scope 3 calculations easy. No, we can help you, and we can help understand, and we can work with you to figure it out, but this is a journey. Basically, it's understanding the emissions from all the stuff that goes on in the hotel, the value chain. And so, number one recommendation as you get to measuring, this is where suddenly, just because you can't measure it doesn't mean you can't improve, and that's the measures of scope 3. I don't know exactly how much the carbon emissions are of everything I buy in a hotel, but I know I can reduce soap. I know I can reduce beef. I know I can reduce things. So that's the other thing about measurement. Biodiversity, next big one. We have had a carbon lens throughout 20, 30 years. Now it's a biodiversity lens. So there's a lot more metric and reporting and evaluation requirements on biodiversity. There's an esoteric one that started in the ESG world, thanks to some of the tourism folks, that said, as a hotel company, I, as an investor, would like to know how many protected areas are in proximity of your portfolio and how many endangered species. That's a tough one, and that doesn't really make much sense. Like this, so we do this, and we have data analytics and services for companies. We help them identify all the biodiverse areas and species. To say, yes, we have 664 species in our portfolio's proximity, not really helpful. But then comes, what do you do with it? So the evaluation of, okay, now here is the exposure of potential impacts we're gonna have on biodiversity. Those are the metrics. Now I'm gonna evaluate, what can I do? Coastal areas, sustainable seafood, responsible fishing, marine protection, and then how do you engage and things like that. So this is where there's a lot more interesting components that affect GSTC, which I'm happy to explain in the Q&A, that will be more relevant because the data have data for the point of what you're gonna do about it, not for the sake of the number. And then the nexus of everything is food waste. You look at carbon emissions, biodiversity impacts, equity of people who are hungry, regulations on it, guest perception, and operational cost savings. You look at, like, what's the one thing that hotels should be really focusing on if you want to be transversal? It's food waste. So shout out to whoever's there, Winnow, I believe Winnow. Yeah, there you go. So these guys, you hit the nail on the nose, nail on the head. Always get them. All right, here we go. So here's this, measurement plus evaluation. In practice, what does it come to? Documentation. And that's where you have to have your ducks in a row. You have to understand, where did I get this data? Where did it come from? Have it on file so that 3 years later, when someone says, how did you calculate that? Where did it come from? You've got it. So that's, of course, what our Greenview portal does, is we focus on these pain points and try to make it easy for the auditors. But if you want to evaluate something correctly, for how you measured it, it's all about your documentation now. So don't downplay documentation. And finally, this is the reality we're facing right now. As we're in this growth of GSTC, as there's more evaluation of what hotels are doing, we see there's discrepancies between, and this is not just GSTC, this is across the board. I mean, we did the basics and we saw a big problem there too. There's the criteria, and there's how do I evaluate whether you're implementing it correctly and well. And that has a bunch of discrepancies because it's very open-ended. And we've seen some massive and sometimes ridiculous interpretations of the GSTC criteria by auditors. So we need to really up that game. But here's how you do. One, don't just assume I'm going to implement the criteria. You can implement the criteria, but also see how will that be evaluated. So your execution will match what's going to be evaluated against. And then as well, engage auditors and others to really get this up front. Don't wait till the end. This is, I know I'm on time, here's my last lesson. This is a lesson we learned from the ESG reporting world. If you want to get a hotel company on the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, or get a high CDP score, all that kind of stuff, you have to look at how do I best answer the question for what they're looking for. And that's the reality of evaluation. But I really like it because now we're not just talking about, yes, I tick the boxes, but I'm going to tick the boxes and I'm going to tick them for evaluation correctly. So hopefully that was a little different from the normal conversation. And yes, hopefully some questions in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Which, by the way, I want to remind everybody, you can post your question on Slido, please. See there's some question already coming in. Okay, so that was a lot of measurement and a lot of advanced thinking. So Roger, we'd love to see how you implement it every day on your day-to-day challenges and businesses. Yeah, please, Roger.
Thank you, Jason. So I'm Roger, lucky to be the Sustainability Director of Marina Bay Sands. My slides will come up. I can talk you through them. Marina Bay Sands, for those of you who have traveled in from overseas, it's the 3 towers at the Marina Bay. We have over 1,800 rooms. We have over 80 dining options and a convention center that can take 45,000 people, plus much, much, much more. And really, measurement and evaluation has been a critical part of our sustainability journey. So I can't, speak at a conference without bringing out a classic conference cliche. So I thought I'd bring you out this one. You can't manage what you don't measure. Anyone not heard that one before, right? It's almost the thinking of 2014. Eric mentioned in his presentation where people weren't measuring, and this was the statement that we had and the vision that we were aiming for. Let's measure it. And I think really the biggest challenge for all of us, whether you're a hotel, you're an airline, you're a destination, is the future. And that's updating this with measuring with ever deeper granularity to meet our ambitious goals. If we are going to hit our ambitious waste targets, our energy targets, our water targets, it's not good enough to have a baseline. We've got to look at where that energy is coming from, where that water is being used, at what time of day, in which outlet, and it's a tricky business. And I think from Marina Bay Sands' side, we've invested a lot in technology that has helped us meet our carbon targets, and we've now reduced our energy footprint, our carbon emissions by 24% in the last decade. But the next phase of that, once all the easy work is done, is really getting into the nitty-gritty data, going into different parts of the business and seeing this energy spike at this time, and getting into the weeds of that. And so I will give you a little oversight of how we do that at Marina Bay Sands. Energy, so we've got over 125,000 sensors across the property, and they're tracking energy, they're tracking water consumption, and they're tracking the air quality as well. And so all of that information, all that data is going into our central control and monitoring system, and then it is also being translated, part of that evaluation element that Eric mentioned, into utility dashboards that we then share around the business, head from the top of the organization to make sure that every outlet or every division of the business understands what's driving its utilities. And then if you imagine 125,000 sensors giving data every second, every minute, every day, every week, it's a tremendous amount of data. So what we've done is invest in an analytics platform as well, which sits above the whole thing. It's not quite what you could call it in the modern context artificial intelligence. It's the good old machine learning. We do have to teach it. It doesn't think for itself, so we give it the rules. If X is Y in Z area, then please flag that for human intervention. And it's with tools like that that help us sift through all of that data and find the data that's really going to help us find a problem, find something that needs maintenance or intervention. And of course, this is all of the platforms within the business, and then beyond that and above, we have our data collection platforms as well, which we use for the purpose of reporting as well. Waste, a really interesting area to be. I think if any of you are involved in waste audits, you know it's not a very technical process. It's a smelly process. We're opening bags, we're looking what's inside it. But if we're really going to hit our diversion targets, we need to know what's in that bag or what's in that skip, where did it come from, and what shouldn't be in there. And this is one of the areas where we use a wider amount of tools. Food waste being one of the first areas. So we work with a platform, Winnow. Mark's in the room now as well. We have that in our kitchens, and that uses artificial intelligence to look at what is being disposed of. It tracks the weight of it, and once you've taught it, it will also teach you the value, what is the cost of what is being disposed of, what hasn't been eaten. And that's a really valuable tool for driving management and driving the outlets in reducing production. And then moving over to our convention center, it's a little bit of a different animal in there. Obviously, in a kitchen, your food waste is pretty much being produced in the kitchen. It's being produced on the buffets, and it's being disposed of through the kitchen. In a convention center, you might have 3 or 4 or 5 floors, and the food waste is actually disposed of in a room next to a banquet. So if we're eating our lunch in here, we might set up a decoy room next door, and then the food waste from the plates goes in there. We need to measure it at that point. So we have a platform, a Singaporean company called Lumitix, which is actually a roving food waste measuring machine, and that also uses artificial intelligence and will educate us on what we're disposing of and track that for our reporting for the events. Then on the recyclable side of things, we have about 7 tons of that a day. We have the old school platform where we weigh the waste on that. Over on the exhibition and construction waste side of things, we have the skips that come out of the convention center. They go into the truck, and that drives onto a platform with our waste management company as well, and we get the data from that. And then last but not least, anything that we cannot divert, anything we cannot upcycle or valorize, goes into one of our J-drums, this huge system which actually compresses the waste and squeezes the liquid and compacts it down. And we're also tracking that with a card, so we know where the waste is coming from. When it goes into the machine, we track that as well. So there's over 6 tools and methods where we're tracking the waste. There's a lot more to be done, obviously, in waste to get to where we want to be. And I'm excited about the technology that's coming out in the coming years with smart bins and things like that. Last but not least, one of the really useful tools we find for driving any of our sustainability goals is this good idea of gamification. I think it's human nature. We compete against one another. We compete against our commercial peers. We compete against our neighbors, our siblings. It's somehow in us, and we use that within our sustainability program as well. And we have our different divisions and outlets and restaurants. We motivate them through public scorecards. So I have wiped the data here a little bit, but this gives you an example of just 2 of the scorecards that we use, of many around the business. So on the left, you can see our responsible seafood target. We are aiming for 50% responsible seafood across the business. Why only 50%? Why not 100%? Because there isn't the volume of the highest level certified sustainable seafood out there in the market. So we've been pleased to work with WWF, who've guided us in only opting for seafood which is MSC or Marine Stewardship Council certified, or Aquaculture Stewardship Council certified, or a low-risk species like our good old friends, the green-lipped mussel from New Zealand. So we're quite strict in our criteria. We track all of that purchasing. And you can see that we identify who are our top performers, which are those restaurants or the kitchens. And then we have a subtle way of identifying the laggards, and we call them the opportunities, and we identify those as well. But with any percentage goal, it has to be translated or evaluated. So we do have restaurants that are doing really good in terms of their percentage, but their purchasing volume is low. So we also do measure the seafood distribution by weight. So we're identifying really who's driving our sustainable seafood program. And then on the right there, you can see one of our packaging reports as well, where we're tracking all of the packaging that the restaurants are purchasing as well, and mapping that against the previous year. And by sharing these publicly, having management being part of that as well, it really drives these departments to engage with our sustainability goals. At the GSTC conference, of course, we have to celebrate the importance and value of certifications for the business as well. We are a proud adopter of many certifications. So we are GSTC accommodation certified. We have the ISO 2012-1, and we've just finalized an audit for ISO 14001 for the full business. We have LEED Platinum for our convention center and for our Art Science Museum, and the Singaporean equivalent, which is the Building and Construction Authority's Green Mark Platinum as well for our convention center. And then we have more sustainable event standards as well across our building. And I think all of them bring different values. They're obviously helping us evaluate our program. Some of them are more process-based, but they do ask us for continual improvement, which I think is really important in what we're doing. And we find a good range of value from those certifications. And that's my whirlwind of everything we're doing in terms of measurement.
Great. Thank you, Roger. So I think we have 2 very hospitality and hotel focused presentations. So I think we're now going to swing this to Matt, who will talk about more from the tour operator point of view. And yes, please, Matt, go ahead.
Thanks very much. Good morning, everybody. Pleasure to be with you. We often think about travel, and particularly holidays, as some form of escape. But what if we were to reframe that and think about travel, tourism, hospitality as an investment? An investment in local communities, in local economies, in local environments, and in local cultures. And if we reframed our thinking as an investment, just like any other investment that we make, we would perhaps become a little bit more focused and obsessed on the numbers, the measurement, and the performance evaluation. My name is Matt Callaghan. I'm Chief Operating Officer of easyJet Holidays. We're a UK-based outbound tour operator providing holidays to millions of customers across Europe and North Africa. We are a value-for-money brand, and we are trying to show the European market that actually with smart business decisions, that sustainable travel does not need to be for those that can afford it. When our business was formed, our airline was formed 29 years ago, it was all about democratizing travel and making sure that travel and the benefits of travel and tourism were accessible to as many people as possible. We're on a journey to become Europe's most loved holiday company, but what does that actually mean? Well, for us, we consider 4 stakeholder groups. We want to be winning for our customers, winning for our shareholders, winning for our people, and crucially, winning for our destinations. And that's where today's conversation comes in. What does winning for our destinations mean, and what does that look like? So our approach to sustainability. We want to enable our customers to what we call holiday better. That's a focus on the people and places that make our holidays so special. If we think about our best ever holiday that we've been on, and the incredible memories that invokes, probably one of the driving forces will be because we're thinking about some of the local people that we met, the local shops, bars, restaurants that we're fortunate enough to experience, some of the beautiful scenery that we saw in that local environment. So that's our focus. And there's 3 elements to our sustainability strategy. Create better holiday choices. That's all about how do we make sure that consumers have enough information to make informed choices about the holiday that they want to go on. Secondly, how do we keep our holidays special? So real focus on what's going on in the destinations that we are privileged enough to serve. And thirdly, how do we transform travel for everyone? How do we use the power of our brand and our scale in order to drive meaningful change across the industry? Now, I believe that you could look at those 3 things and look at probably your own businesses or many travel and tourism businesses and see some pretty similar things. What's new or different about our approach? I believe that things that are setting us apart from others are our 3 enablers: education, collaboration, and rapid implementation. Education. This stuff is hard. If it wasn't hard and it wasn't difficult, we would have been doing this decades ago, because we know fundamentally that this is the right thing to do. But how we go about it is more of a challenge. Collaboration. None of us can do this on our own. But we have to be a bit careful with collaboration, because it's quite often used as an excuse for doing nothing. We sit here and we go, oh yeah, well, collaboration, that's what we need to. We all need to get everybody together. And if you're anything like me, you've been in a workshop and we get the sticky notes out and we go, oh, let's get the pens, and we all write stuff up and we'll go round and we'll go and stick them up. And then there's a bit of a realization that, hang on, these are the same things that we were talking about in the same workshop with the same people last year, the year before, and even pre-COVID. But we all have this warm, fuzzy feeling that we're collaborating, so we must be making progress. Well, how are we measuring? And so thirdly, rapid implementation. I strongly believe that pace is more important than perfection. Getting on, trying stuff, seeing what happens has got to be better than trying to work with everyone to find the perfect solution. So our discussion today, measurement and evaluation. Measurement isn't just a checkbox. I'm a chartered accountant by background, used to work in one of the big 4 global accountancy firms. So know better than anyone what it's like to go around ticking numbers. That is not what this is about. This is about our collective credibility, not just mine, not just that of easyJet Holidays, but us as an industry. It's our credibility, it's our integrity, and it should be our roadmap, because we've got a long journey ahead of us. So some examples of what we are doing linked to our strategy. So create better holiday choices, our certified sustainable range. So we partner with GSTC, and why? Because it's holistic, socioeconomic, cultural, environmental. Don't need to talk to this room about why GSTC standards matter. We work with over 1,600 hotels with globally recognized certification. And what we have found through measurement, we principally sell our holidays online, by the way, that when customers use a filter to search for our sustainable certified collection of hotels, online conversion is up, and customer satisfaction is up. This is not just business sense from an ESG point of view. This is business sense at the core heart of the commercial realizations of any business. This makes solid commercial sense. This isn't just about being nice and fluffy and have that warm feeling. This is about hard-nosed commercial performance. And we do this through support for our hotel partners, things like training that we partner with the GSTC on. Mark must be absolutely loving this conference. So how do we reduce food waste through the use of artificial intelligence? So we've talked about some of the the high-level macro things that we're doing, hotel certification. But if we then go into real granular, in one hotel that we partner with, in one restaurant, we made an investment of circa 30,000 euros. Over 12 months, we saw buffet waste reduced by 68%. In that one hotel, in that one restaurant, they're saving 114,000 euros. For anyone that struggles to get business cases through on the sustainability front, to have something that pays back in 3 months and 1 week is simply incredible. Measurement allows us to drive through some of these difficult conversations. And thirdly, Transform Travel for Everyone, our landmark partnership with UN Tourism. So we are working with UN Tourism on a first-of-its-kind ESG framework for tourism businesses. Part of the challenge that we face when talking about measurement is the differences that occur. How one country defines a tourist is different to how another defines a tourist. So until we can get commonality in the words that we use, and of course words matter, and definitions of terms, then it's going to be a challenge for us. So measurement and evaluation are more than tools. They're the very foundation, we believe, on which sustainable tourism will thrive. From the top of our business to the bottom of our business, we are trying to measure. If it doesn't start in your boardroom, then it's going to be difficult. The amount of bonus I get paid at the end of the year depends on how many GSTC certified properties we have in our portfolio. That is the same for our Chief Commercial Officer, for our Chief People Officer, across our executive team. This stuff matters. We put the same emphasis on this as we do on customer satisfaction, as we do on employee engagement. If it's not starting at the top, don't be surprised why it's not working all through the organization. So by committing to rigorous standards and transparent metrics, we are making a promise, not just to our customers, not just to our shareholders, but to local communities, those communities that make our holidays so special. So colleagues, together, let's lead the way in making sustainability not just a goal, but a proven, measurable reality. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Oh, that's the first time I heard of, do what you're paid for, basically. Yeah? That's probably the best way. So all these are wonderful, right? And I see a lot of interesting questions coming in, but all this should translate into real change, right, Saba? So how do you really look at the consumer behavior, right? So I know all these wonderful things we talk about in this conference and all these initiatives. And what's important is, people really have to change their behavior to collectively transform the industry, right? So we'd love to hear your perspective on consumer behavior side of things, too.
Good morning, everyone. It is an honor and a pleasure to be speaking at this panel with the esteemed gentlemen. Thank you, Jason, for the introduction. As you know, my name is Saba, and I work as a behavior change specialist with BehaviorSMART, which is a boutique consultancy specializing in harnessing the science of behavior to design sustainability solutions for destinations and travel businesses worldwide. A little loaded, but I will try to break it down for you. What do I mean by BehaviorSMART, or what is behavioral science? This science heavily studies the phenomena of making choices, how and why people make the choices they do, the decisions they do, what drives it, which is often habits, emotions, feelings, environment, context. So for example, if, with travel, travel comes a bucket load of choices for a traveler, right? What location to pick, what accommodation, where to eat. Sometimes it's with a lot of research. Sometimes it's just the ease of making choices, like picking up an accommodation. One looks at Google reviews. The simple idea of relying on the trust of reviews is what we call social proof in behavioral science, a phenomena that is fairly known. And I want to dive a little bit deeper into the science of making choices. The traditional approach to making decisions was about that humans and people tend to be very rational, practical. With all the information available, they tend to choose the best option for themselves. They tend to optimize the choices. But behavioral science tells that as humans, we love shortcuts. We love the ease of making choices. We love the idea of just, anchoring our choices to someone who can do that for us. For example, if we were to go to a restaurant with a group of friends for dinner, we often tend to order the same appetizer, the same drink as the previous one did, probably because it's at the end of a long work, tiring day, or it's too hard to evaluate, or we just got anchored to the previous one's choice, right? We also tend to be heavily influenced by the moment. So, for example, if I were to wake up and read this news this morning, it might get a little dark, but about a plane crash, and I'm planning a trip today. So I would probably see options and think that, okay, flying is dangerous. Let me try to find an alternative. I might commute by road or take a train. But when I am on the screen trying to book my trip, and there's a discount flashing for a cheap flight option, I might just jump onto it because it's an instant reward for me. So the main idea about being behavior smart is to really understand how people really think, decide, and act in order to design sustainability solutions. As humans, inherently, we want to be responsible, we want to be good, we want to reduce the carbon footprint, we want to opt for sustainable accommodations, eat locally. But it also comes down to the ease of making such choices for travelers. There's this friction that lingers between making this optimum choice from the ideas, from the goals that one has. What is this friction essentially? It's called the intention-action gap in behavioral science. Consider this, a traveler intending to be eco-friendly on a day of their trip, right? They want to travel by public transport, eat locally, avoid single-use plastic. As the day unfolds, they probably hail a taxi over a bus ride to save time, pick up a plastic bottle because it's so difficult to find a refilling station, or just grab a quick snack at an international chain versus eating at a local cafe. So this shows that despite great intentions, it is so easy to fall into the intention-action gap. Like, I would love to be a member of the 5 a.m. club, but the snooze option on my alarm, right? It's in the design, it's in the system. As an industry, we do an incredible job of studying intention, studying the actual goals of what travelers want to do. Like the Kanta report that says 82% travelers want to travel sustainably, but only 22% convert those to behaviors. Or 80% want to book sustainable accommodations, but 31% actually end up booking. 72% want to avoid single-use plastic, but actually 40% increase in plastic waste was reported in the Mediterranean Sea by WWF. So this affirms the fact that there are good intentions, there is the goal of being sustainable, but what slips is sustainability. Because now from behavioral science, we know that the focus is on the now. The focus is on making the most of this trip. The focus is on the experience. Sustainability for travelers then becomes an extra responsibility. It's an add-on benefit. Now that we know that great intentions don't always translate into great actions, what I'd like to propose is what if we shift the focus on measuring what people really do, measuring the actual actions along with intentions. imagine the power of these insights for travel businesses, for destinations, and harnessing this data of what actually transpires into actions. If 72% want to avoid single-use plastic, are they actually doing it? On that note, I want to share some examples, what we call the BehaviorSMART measurement examples. These are from small behavior changes that were implemented with individual SMEs across a small period of time. So imagine the scale of impact, right? These are also some outcomes from one of our projects in the Scandinavian countries, also co-funded by the European Union. So a simple flyer at an accommodation that caters to travelers that are focused on outdoor experiences, nature loving. A simple flyer about lesser known attractions led to 100% of visitors visiting one of those attractions. So managing visitor flow efficiently from the hotspots. A simple swap from plastic cups to reusable ones just over a summer saw a cut down of 1,500 plus plastic cups. Or a simple visual guideline in Norway had on waste separation led to 38% cut down in general waste. Based on these, our advisory projects over the years, our consultancy projects over the years, we decided to recently digitalize all of these behavior-centric interventions and strategies over a platform. It's called the BehaviorSMART platform, where we bring together these behavioral interventions along with the idea of providing measurement tactics and communication tactics. If you're curious, please scan the QR to check it out, or you can catch me for Q&A. I'll be around. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Well, that was great. So, because I often think about it, because I used to spend a lot of time in the digital advertising and marketing industry for the past decade. So we were actually very good at applying very fancy techniques to influence behavior, but probably in a irresponsible purchasing way. So I thought, this industry really needs to have more discussion in this topic. Like, how do we really change the behavior of the consumer in the direction that we all want? Okay, so we're moving now to Q&A. I see a lot of questions coming in, but I'm gonna actually throw in 2 questions that I have for the panelists to kind of juice up the discussion a little bit. And then for all of you who are posting on Slido, I might not ask your question one by one, but I'll try to consolidate some of the common patterns of the questions into the relevant ones for the panelists, right? So, as we kind of just heard about behavior change and everything, so I'm sure in your day-to-day business, you have seen like efforts or programs where you have the whole enthusiasm of implementing, maybe you get the buy-in, and maybe after a year or 6 months, it just doesn't work. Like the data isn't adding up, or the consumer is not buying. So I'm wondering, have any of you had those experiences, especially maybe from the operator side, that you have some good initiative, you set up some great targets, and maybe the measurement just didn't work. And how do you have that difficult conversation with the team, or how do you maybe try to optimize or change your approach? Yeah. Any case studies or any examples of those?
Not specifically that springs to mind. I think part of the challenge, so we work with about 7,000 different hotel partners, ranging from big global chains to small owner-managed properties. And I think what we've tried to do is to take a much more, so if we think about hotel certifications, a much more targeted approach. So we consider our top 100 properties by volume, and then we consider everything else. Why do we do that? Well, the top 100 is where, by definition, we're sending most customers. So if we want to have as big an impact as possible, we need to be targeting hotels and working with those hotel partners where most of our customers are choosing to go. Now, by their nature, they're much bigger properties, and so the opportunities for things like food waste reduction are generally bigger, but there's also tends to be a greater capacity to absorb change, as well as perhaps a more corporate mindset to drive and have the desire to drive things forward. So I guess we split into that because we were initially trying to just target all customers but actually what we're realizing is for some, all hotel partners, but for some hotels, particularly when we were just coming out of the back of the COVID years, it was just not an appropriate time to be trying to engage in hotel certification. Now, that's not to say it's not a valid cause, but actually we don't want this to be a compliance exercise. We want the hotel partners to believe that what they are doing makes good business sense for them. But we also need to recognize that the person we're trying to have that conversation with is also trying to make sure that they've got enough employees for the coming season to be able to cook food, to clean bedrooms, to make sure the swimming pool's got the right level of chlorine in it, to make sure that they've dealt with the health and safety assessments that we're also asking them to complete. So I think it's just how do you tailor your approach, but also from a measurement and evaluation point of view, we know that we will have greatest impact if we can get as many of our top 100 properties certified, which is why the percentage of our customers that stay in certified hotels is 50% higher than the total number of certifications that we've got if you look at our portfolio.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Roger, any examples, or everything's all good on your side?
No examples spring to mind. I think the challenge is often how can we measure on some of these things, and then making sure that it's accurate and complete. But luckily, I don't have a case study to share.
Okay.
We've got awful data. Sorry.
Well, Eric, maybe you have some experiences, or
I mean, it's all over the place, right? But I think, I mean, one example I like, there was a hotel company that was started to measure the water back in the day, and properties are always measure water. So they start tracking the water from corporate, and they see the spike that the property didn't notice. Why? There was a leak in the pool. So because they were tracking it, they saw the leak in the pool, and they notified the hotel. They're like, "Hey, hotel, there's a big spike. What is it?" They go investigate. They find the leak. So those are the easy ones, the tangible wins of saying, "Okay, here's what you do." But now, yeah, you get into the point of where things are more complicated to measure. And as Matt said, it was like, just don't be perfect. Get it going. Get it started. I mean, that's the ethos that just keeps going, right?
Right, and Eric, just to stay on you for a second. So this is kind of top of mind recently for me, because a lot of players and a lot of operators here now try to get certified, right? So they got to get all this data to the auditor. So that's really just for auditing purposes. Versus, these guys, some of these guys really try to operate and make real change, right? So how do you actually kind of explain to the audience or really approach the difference to just being sort of data collection for auditing purposes versus data analysis and collection just for real operational change,
But I think this is where GSTC at its heart, it's about the management system, the continuous improvement. So again, this is where if we get into the criteria, it's like, what is the point of the criterion? Why are you asking this question? Why am I even looking at this? Some of them are because you need to measure and monitor performance. The others are because it needs to help inform what you're doing on an ongoing basis, which will be in flux. And so I think that's the message is, yeah, you need to, again, all the pieces, like, cultural heritage and other things, it's the idea that I'm going to put in mechanisms in my hotel that we will address these issues, we'll continuously monitor them, we'll look for opportunities, and we'll try to improve on them. And then building that awareness, I mean, that's such a key piece, especially with the role hotels play in a destination, in a community, and the people coming from all walks of life in a hotel, to get them to actually go and do things, that's the intention of a lot of this, right?
Yeah, no, that's great. So yeah, I think it's often we don't want to lose sight to the real objective of doing all this, because while certification creates a guiding force and sort of a best practice model, but I think the real challenge is to really optimize and operationalize all these. So I will move into some audience questions. I think there's a bunch of questions on how do we really measure the S aspect, the social aspect, the culture aspect, right? And I think that's been a topic of GSTC for many years, and frankly, it's quite a challenging one, right? So maybe one of you have some advanced thinking in that. Yeah, Eric, go ahead.
Or Matt first.
Or Matt, yeah.
So it is difficult, and part of the reason it's difficult is it comes back to the inconsistent methodologies and terminologies, which is why kind of working towards a harmonized ESG measurement framework we believe is so important. So that is macro. But if we go micro, we recently conducted research across all of our destination management companies. So our business model is different to classic European tour operators. We do not have representatives in destinations from the UK. So some of our competitors would every year send thousands of people from the UK out to Spain, Portugal, Greece, Turkey, Egypt, and they would go and live there for 8-9 months of the year. That would be the representatives of the tour operator, and at the end of the season, they'd come back. From our outset in 2019, we decided that we didn't think that was the right model for us, so we engaged with local destination management companies that provide that airport meet and greet service, transfer experiences in hotel service where it's needed by customers. We've just completed research with all of our DMCs. 99% of DMC employees consider themselves as local. Now for us, that's incredible. Why is that incredible? One, it provides much better customer experience. It's got to be better that our customers are being serviced by people that are from the destination, that are incredibly proud of the destination. They're incredibly proud that the biggest single purchase that a family has made that year is to come and experience the people and places that they've grown up in. They know far more about it, both the off the beaten track places to go and have a look at, but also when things go wrong, how to navigate the legal system or the medical provision. But it's also better because of the S of ESG, that we can't measure right now leakage about how much money is leaving the destination, but employing 99% of our on-the-ground customer service staff in resort to classify themselves as local has got to be a really positive thing. So we can't measure the full impact of it, but again, this is about pace over perfection. We're measuring what we can measure right now, and so far, it's encouraging what we're seeing.
Great. Eric? Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, I knew this was going to come up, so I prepared some ideas. I mean, this is where we have to strike that balance, right? Because most importantly, as we get this top down, we can't confuse the properties. We need to focus on getting them to understand. So when a property gets a survey and they have to fill out a bunch of stuff without context, it's detrimental to the mission sometimes. So for example, if the property suddenly, they say, look, do you have a beehive on your roof? I was like, wait, why do I have a beehive? And the company's like, wait, I have to go figure out how many beehives I have on my roof? Whoa. Like, that can be demotivating. But again, beehives are important. There's the aspect. So if you take like the understanding first and look at the processes, and then you can get to it. Another example. So for example, gentleman here, Trey, he's got a documentary initiative in building awareness of the marine life in Africa, to promote marine conservation in Africa, to help African people value their own heritage in marine conservation, to help promote protection of the marine environment, to help stop overfishing, to help promote local entrepreneurs and local communities to really do that and work and get the youth involved. So there's this massive initiative, right? And of course, have sustainable operations to build interest in snorkeling and diving, with a tour operator who has been certified by an accredited CB according to their standard, the GSTC. So that right there, that's B1, community support. B4, local entrepreneurs. C1, culture and action. C2, protecting local heritage. C3, presenting heritage. D3.3, visits natural sites. D3.4, visiting interactions. And D3.6, wildlife harvesting trades. That's like, whoa, this thing ticks a lot of boxes. But again, it's not that I'm measuring how many African documentaries have I supported every year at my hotel. It's about the context, and then you apply it in local ways. And so it's difficult. But again, if we're looking at the hotel and how do you get the hotel to do things, then you look at it that way. The difficulty we have is translating, and maybe in their case, the auditing is a little bit easier. The difficulty you have is translating that into stakeholders who want metrics. And that's the juxtaposition that we have to have right now. But my focus is, again, let's get the hotels involved with the GSTC as a base and go from there.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I often feel like the S aspect of the tourism industry is really our core product, right? It's the experience, and that's where we can be actually really creative and basically revenue driven. But I'm wondering, because I see a lot of examples of operators who are applying social projects or impact projects. So I'm curious, Roger, because you represent a very large operation, right? And I've seen some of your projects at Sands and stuff. So do you kind of have this on a more single project basis and you measure the outcome of a particular impact project, or do you plan a whole social initiative on a more kind of long-term roadmap basis? Like, hey, we have a 2-year, 3-year roadmap, and these are the the key metrics on the board level we want to hit? How do you kind of plan and approach these and measure it? Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a whole Sands for Singapore program, which is focused on the social side of things here in Singapore. It's been going for 11 years, and we've supported hundreds of organizations and given them millions of dollars. We're very lucky to have over 11,000 employees. So we get them engaged all through the year on the different projects, what's happening out in the community. We have packing projects happening within the property as well, and then we track their hours and all the stuff they're doing through a platform, actually a mobile platform, which is installed on every employee's phone. So we're able to track our social impact quite clearly, and we communicate it very clearly. We measure it and put it in our sustainability reports. I think the cultural impact is the tricky one. I mean, culture is constantly evolving, and I think the GSTC do a good job of addressing that in the criteria.
Great. Saba, you have some examples to add? Yeah?
Yes, I love that question. I think from a traveler behavior point of view, it is, when it's a different context, it's a different culture. I think travelers are at that pivot point where they are ready to adapt to new cultures, new social experiences. And I think in terms of leveraging that pivot point to assess the engagement, their interactions with the intangible heritage or local communities, I think that could be very powerful. Another thing is, what if local communities are also engaged in assessing, in establishing a baseline of what is the kind of engagement they'd probably expect from the travelers, from the visitors, and how that baseline is then, measured over time to understand the impact on social and cultural aspects. I think we're all a fan of Mark here, but yesterday, he mentioned that, different contexts could define different measurements, different assessments that are taking in place, and meeting people from where they are could be the way to go.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I'm just kind of messing up my Slido here. There's a few questions on Slido that's about kind of budget setting and finding the kind of the talent or the team to do this. So I'd like to kind of combine some of these insights into have any of you or any of these metrics change the discussion in terms of budget setting or even on the promotion, as Matt talked about, even compensation level. I don't know if that's, because that sounds to me pretty useful. How that kind of the money aspect internally in terms of setting more resources and stuff. Yeah. Eric, you have more.
Go ahead. So it's a double-edged sword, right?
Yep.
So compensation gives an incentive to do something, and this is a great one, by the way. That is correctly marked. I'm compensated based on my performance targets, based on the number of hotels GSTC certified. The problem you get is, again, what's the purpose and how are you doing it? We ran into this problem in the ESG reporting world, where it's like CDP, GRESB, these others. It's like, do you have executive compensation related to sustainability at a company level? Yes, because it scores the box, right? So then what happens is that the executives get like, well, how do I do that? It's tough. How do I do my performance? I'm not going to do it on my metrics. Things go up and down. So they say, okay, well, based on my score. And so it's like this vicious cycle. So suddenly my compensation is tied to my CDP score. So I'm going to be very specific to try to make sure I increase my score only. And it's kind of misguided because you're doing things that may not be important to your company, but will box tick so you can get a performance bonus. So that's again, going back to what are you trying to do and accomplish and how do we achieve it? That's there. But again, it's easy to say no, but the process-based one we do. And budgets are tough, right? But yes, building in, budgeting for this, like 6 Senses or others will do, put in a management contract. The other, though, we did with companies. Said, okay, here's what we need to do. You're going to have a KPI that you will evaluate 10 energy or water efficiency projects a year as an owner, right? So you're going to commit to evaluating 10 projects. Doesn't mean you're going to do them, but you will spend the time to look and see, do these make sense and really study them? And if you do that, maybe you do none, maybe you do one, maybe 7 of them make sense. But put that process-based KPI in there, and that's what will ultimately be able to keep, what I'm saying, build the culture, get it going, and you miss 100% of the shots you never take. So that's the kind of thing we built in that, and it does work, right?
Great. Well, Matt, any insight to share?
Well, just to build on the point, as I said, the benefit that we have by including it in our corporate strategic scorecard is that every monthly board meeting, it forces a discussion. It's not like in some organizations where it'd be like, oh, excuse me, can I put sustainability on the agenda, and kind of fighting and competing, and at best you might get a quarterly slot for 20 minutes and then the meeting's overrunning, so can you do it in 10 minutes? The start of every monthly board meeting, we are working through how are we winning for our customers, how are we winning for our shareholders, how are we winning for our people, and how are we winning for our destinations. So it forces the conversation around, well, what have we done this month? The metrics aren't moving, what are we doing? So we might start with a budget for the year, but if there's parts of our balanced scorecard that are over-delivering and parts that are under-delivering, then as any business would do, we have a conversation about, do we need to reprioritize? So that's the first bit. The second bit is, as part of our education, collaboration, rapid implementation, and the importance of pace over perfection, what we found works is to make relatively small, for a business our size, targeted investments in piloting things, so like the food waste reduction. Why? Because research shows that we are a more trusted brand. Corporations are actually more trusted than NGOs. So, what does that mean? That means in trying to drive forward some of this agenda, if we can talk to our supply chain and our partners about the case study of the hotel in Tenerife that we've worked with Mark and his team on to measure food waste reduction, that's far more compelling and far more likely to drive buy-in than otherwise would exist if we were just trying to say, let's talk about food waste. Because we've got data that supports the business case. So sorry, I've moved on slightly, Jason, from your point. But I think the financials really do matter. And having this as a board-level conversation is so critical to trying to drive forward change.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to switch gear a little bit. So there was quite a lot of corporate level sort of stuff, right, and board, and which might not be relevant to some of the smaller businesses, because I see a lot of question coming in that's wanting to understand more about small operators, small hotels, how are these all relevant, right? So I know probably a lot of you have different experiences working with your suppliers or your partners, or even at one point, have the experience in smaller companies. So I wondered, from your perspective, right, any advice for how would the smaller company be able to do the measurement evaluation, right? And I actually love to start with Saba, because you, I think for smaller player, I think a lot of it's very intimate operation. It's just owners and a bunch of team members. So behavior changes, it can start from ourselves, right, from the team members. So any insight or advice you could share for the smaller company, how they can do this?
Yes, absolutely. I'd like to, share from also the perspective of how, like for smaller operators and also, in liaison with the destinations, how that can be managed. For example, a lot of times we have been seeing this, challenge of visitor flows. This year, the news were flashing all around the world about, how visitor flows has been increasing in, exponentially, and how, communities and countries and regions are getting impacted. So the idea from, from a smaller scale to start probably could be to, then assess, to tap onto these biases that I've briefly mentioned in my presentation. So for example, visiting hotspots comes from this, often comes out from this, phenomena, which is actually, very commonly known, the fear of missing out, right? So what if you tap onto the phenomena of, exclusivity when it comes to highlighting, lesser known attractions or off the beaten path attractions, like play out the fear of missing out with exclusivity, which means probably, highlighting that how, hidden or off the course these destinations are, and then managing and measuring how that help manage the visitor flow. For example, if as a destination you're implementing guides or information that is easily accessible for travelers, are they actually downloading those guides? Are they actually downloading those maps? Are you able to track the number of footfall at those destinations. So probably, some of these implementations don't need to be very large scale, don't need to be very expensive, but just, from the idea of measuring before and after.
Yep, Eric, go ahead.
Small hotels should get involved with their local hotel associations and start talking shop about sustainability.
Right. So I think there's a lot of kind of practical ways smaller companies can do, especially interacting with their guests. But I also was reminded to ask this question, Roger. So because you obviously work in a very big property, but you have a lot of tenants, right? And these tenants might not be very big, and of course they are part of your ecosystem. So how do you work with the tenants on onboarding them to your sustainability journey?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think the relationship with a tenant is similar to a customer when they're in a hotel room. Obviously, there's only so much you can do, and you've got to use the carrot rather than the stick when you're talking to your customers. And we apply the same philosophy for our tenants, which might be luxury brands in our mall, or they might be celebrity restaurants, people like that. So we do integrate some requirements in our green lease program, and you get them in the contract. I think that's fundamental. We obviously also focus on the whole building and managing the building in the most sustainable way, which supports their operations, and then to drive individual performance in a subtle and motivational way, we do what's called tenant engagement programs, where we run a little project. So we sub-meter the restaurants, or we go in and we measure additional waste from an outlet, and we give them a baseline. This was you last year, this was you 3 months ago, and then for these next 3 months, we want to measure your performance, and we want to see if you can go down. So some people don't engage with that; they're too busy servicing customers, and others go really hard and they make a lot of changes in their business, which we've then subtly educated them through their own actions of how they can reduce their impact, and we see some of that benefit carry on after the engagement program as well.
So let me dig it a bit further into that.
Yeah.
Two questions, right? So one, like if they just don't engage, do you invite them out of your building, or
No.
Okay, that's
still a
clear.
customer.
Okay, that's great. So more carrot approach.
It's like if a customer doesn't, have their bed linen changed, or they want to have their bed linen changed, we're not going to show them the door.
Okay, all right, we got that clear. Okay, so second, because I know a lot of your tenants are probably restaurants, right? So
Yeah.
the very diverse type of restaurants, like Chinese restaurant, fast food, salad bars. So all of them may be operating different kind of kitchen machines, or just have different facility devices, right? So do they have to sort of report back to you on in sort of common framework or standard, or how do you kind of gather their various type of data to consolidate into yours?
Yeah, so we're just sub-metering it. So maybe we're tracking water, or maybe we're measuring the waste, or maybe we are tracking the energy, and then we report it back to them. And then we rely on them to make the changes in the way they're operating. And it could be, shortening the amount of cleaning and leaving less taps running. It can be, turning their lights off earlier. There can be lots of things that they can do within the business that can reduce the footprint.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I think we have about 6-something minutes left. There's a few questions about Scope 3, and I think Eric kind of opened up that conversation a bit. It is very difficult, of course. Scope 3, probably Scope 3 is the most challenging from a tour operator point of view, right? So I wonder if we could spend maybe the last few minutes of discussion talking about your approach to Scope 3, carbon emission type of measurement, Matt.
Jason, you know how to finish a panel on a high. So let's strap it in. Here we go. Well, for us, actually, from a tour operator point of view, if we're thinking about carbon emissions, the Scope 3 is, get it materially correct, is really quite straightforward, because the air travel makes up such a big percentage. But to link the Scope 3 bit to one of the other questions, which is around smaller organizations, if I just go back to the food waste pilot that we ran, when we first had the conversation with the hotel about wanting to do this, and talking about what the investment would be, circa 30,000 euros for year one. A lot of money, not sure we can afford that. Then we said, okay, we will invest in year one. Because what was apparent, but clearly not apparent to everybody, was they didn't realize that they were losing hundreds of thousands of euros every year through food waste. So arguably, you can't afford not to spend 30,000 euros to save 200,000 euros. But in all of our businesses, we're blind to what just goes on day in, day out, which is why measurement is so important. Because until we've got a baseline to understand what is going on and what money is just going out the door, that's before we think about the social injustices of food waste and the environmental impact of food waste. The measurement is so important. But of course, all of this Scope 3, whether it's talking about kind of what's going on in properties, is difficult. And we need to remember that the infrastructure, that even across Europe, where we send people on holiday, is vastly different. So what you can do in big conference facilities like this, in places like Turkey, is very different than you can do in small properties in remote parts of the Greek islands. So again, it's about, for us, our approach is to support hotel partners on their journey, recognizing that that journey is very different. So just like Roger has said, we include in all of our direct hotel contracts a contractual requirement that hotels have or are making meaningful progress towards obtaining GSTC recognized certification or equivalent. Some of our hotels are there, others requires us to support them. So we are not waiving contracts in front of people and saying clause 13b.2 says that you need to do this, because we don't believe at this point in time that's the right thing to do. What we are doing is trying to put our arms around our hotel partners to understand how can we help them on the journey. And some of this stuff is us lobbying local, regional, national governments about what they can do. Some of this is us making tactical investments to demonstrate and create case studies about how changing shower heads can save water. But these aren't things that necessarily come to mind to smaller hoteliers that have got a dozen other things that they need to be doing. So for us, it's how can we create case studies around measurement that then we can demonstrate to others, look, this is how you can go about it. And actually, it might be imperfect, but small steps forward are better than standing still.
Thank you. Eric,
strap in.
I'm sure you have something to say. Yeah.
So scope 3, here's what I say, is that scope 3 is a big, diverse range, so don't treat it all at once. Here's what we do. We say, okay, we have to segment the scope 3. There's 4 categories, 4 groupings that we do. One, when you get into the scope 3 journey, first, let's figure out the stuff that doesn't apply to us, get that gratification, not applicable. Second, let's look at the ones that are derived from the inventory anyway, category 3, category 5, your waste, your upstream well to tank emissions, that kind of thing, done. Okay. Then comes, what are the ones that we can more easily quantify? Business travel, employee commutes, just for the quantification. And then come the stuff that's going to be longer term, category 1, 2, maybe a little 4. But when you do this exercise, go in reverse. Start with category 15 and work your way down, and then talk about category 1 at the end of the discussion, because category 1 will derail everything. The idea that I need to figure out how much emissions are generated from everything I buy in my hotel, the thousands of finished products, is ridiculous. So it's a longer journey. And you have to make friends with your procurement departments, because this is the first time that people are looking under the hood in procurement departments, not just in hotel companies, but across the board, not for what they're spending, but how are you categorizing, what are you buying, what do you buy? So you have to be careful and build a rapport with them to understand what you're doing. And then, again, it's that 3-prong. You have, how am I going to get my source data? How am I going to quantify the emissions, and how am I going to decarbonize? We try to put that into 3 different separate work streams so that the source data doesn't derail the other 2, and just keep going. But yeah, it's got to be a long journey. And the other thing is, again, thinking longitudinally. We got caught because, I did carbon inventories in 2012, 2013, scope 1 and 2. We made some stuff up back then, or just, estimate, okay, let's put this together. 7 years later, the auditor's like, how did you do that for your baseline? We had to go back. And so we were like, no, we need to really document things well. And so be careful about scope 3, because it inherently means you're going to be recalculating, rethinking, and updating your precision over time. So it's a long haul. But yeah, be careful about that and going through that effort and what's worth it to quantify. The exercise now is really just to build awareness, figure out, get it going, work with your suppliers, because ultimately a lot of it will depend on them, and then figure out collectively as much as you can to decarbonize.
Great, thank you. So sorry, we're running out of time, but there's actually really a lot of really interesting questions I'd love to follow on. But let's please give a round of applause for all the panelists for insightful discussion.